This is a photo I took of my granny in a place called Assel. In case you don't know, quick background info, I grew up here in the beautiful country of Austria. However, neither of my parents are originally from here. My dad is from the UK and my mum is from the other side of the world, from Japan. She grew up in Tokyo. And that is where her mum, my granny, lives. However, she is actually not originally from Tokyo. So this map is kind of flipped, but this here is Tokyo, and she grew up all the way down south on this island here called Kyushu. Close to the well-known Nagasaki, there is Sasebo. And I wanted to go there with her. I have been before, but back then I was, well, small? So I don't really remember much. Anyway, that is how today's story begins. I told my granny that I would like to visit Sasebo with her, and in the end we decided to just go on a Kyushu round trip and explore some other places too. Of course, I had my cameras with me, and so in this video I'm taking you with me on a week of film photography in the south of Japan. By the way, this story takes place in November last year, just before I left Japan. I finished up a lot of work in October in order to take some time off at the beginning of November for this trip. Instead of going straight down from Tokyo to Kyushu, I stopped by in Osaka and Onomichi, which you might remember from the video I published a couple weeks ago about that stay in Onomichi. After my stay in that cute town, it was time to continue my trip and meet up with my granny in Beppu. She came directly from Tokyo. I got to ride this really cool train, the Limited Express Sonic, which had a very interesting design. I don't know if you care, but I'm a bit of a train enthusiast, so I thought this was a really cool experience. On the outside, the train looked somewhat industrial, whereas on the inside, the design had this funny mix going on. The floor was wooden, which gave it a luxurious feeling, however the seats looked more like something from a Star Wars set, with the funky line design. I really enjoyed the experience, however I didn't actually shoot anything yet because the lighting was quite tricky and I was pretty sure that it was not worth spending my precious film on these mediocre conditions. In Beppu, my granny and I met up and checked into our hotel and went on an evening stroll to explore the city before it gets dark and then find a place to eat. It was cool to see a little bit of the city, however this is not what we actually came for. My granny had made some plans for the next day. We ended the day with a great find. We came across this restaurant that served some incredible food and that was the end of the day. The next morning I looked out the window and the lighting was looking promising. I had a rough idea of where we were going, but to be honest, my granny did all the planning because she knows exactly what she wants to see, and so I just said I'll tag along wherever we go, and I felt like today I might actually shoot some photos.
Todo iluminado por el
We took a bus that was going to take us to a small town in the mountains that my granny wanted to check out. I was not expecting to board this normal city bus and then end up driving through some beautiful landscapes. This is where I began shooting again, simply to document the pretty scenes I got to witness. These photos aren't really particularly good, but they capture the memories, and that is what really counts, you know?
Una ventana de ilusión. Miedo y llanto, una niña buscando entre.
This one I have to say I like a lot though. The proportions of the shapes, the landscape and the sky feel very pleasing in this one. So we had arrived in this town called Diffusion, which to me felt like a random place an hour away from Beppu, but to my surprise it was actually quite touristy, with especially a lot of Asian tourists, but I get it now, it's a really cute place, definitely worth a visit. I think this shot is not bad. I like the layers that stack on top of each other with the intense vegetation in the foreground, the house in the midground, and the mountain and sky in the background. I like this photo a lot. It feels very Japanese and captures two things I like a lot about Japan. Firstly, the way the vegetation is often embraced in Japan. Cities in Austria can feel a little dry to me. They lack plants and feel a little too artificial. Smaller towns and the countryside are way better though. But in Japan, it is common to see plants being embraced, be it out here in a small town or even in downtown Tokyo. To be fair, sometimes it maybe goes a little too far, like places that are literally being overgrown, but this photo I find captures a good example of balancing housing, streets and plants. And the other thing I like in this shot is the car, because it's one of those squashed cars. I like Japanese small car culture. This is another shot that I took because I thought it was cool how this road and the house are in such a balance with grass, bushes and trees. Here's a cute portrait I shot of my granny as she stood in this pocket of light holding up a red leaf that she picked up.
これもあとちょっとで赤になるのかな。とても濃いの赤だね。そこはもうすごい。
Then, after our walk through the town, we caught the bus again that took us back to Beppu. Yufun was our morning activity, and now it was time to return to Beppu for our afternoon activity, which is to see the bubbly hot springs that Beppu is famous for. I like this photo a lot. The composition worked out nicely, the lighting is very interesting, I love how it creates this pattern with the fence's round shape. Also, the backdrop is so interesting with the trees at the back and the steam glowing up in front of them thanks to the sun. Also, I love that my granny is wearing her vibrant red jacket, which makes her stand out so nicely. Here's another photograph that I think turned out pretty cool. If you know my older photography, my work from around 2020, you know that I am a big fan of fog. And so with all the steam here, I was having a great time. The two people in frame here add a perfect bit of extra life to the photograph without crowding the composition. And I love that the guy on the left looks over, which adds a sense of tension as he looks at the other person. Also, the mildly diffused sunlight looks incredible. With all of this fog around me, I was of course not done having my fun and got a couple more shots. This is another one I'm very happy with, it's just kind of epic. I don't know, it feels good to look at. I got very lucky here with a bit of sunlight coming through. I like this photo because the composition is kind of weird yet so simple. It's simple in the sense that it's just a bunch of geometric shapes here. The photo consists of lines and circles, however, then suddenly my granny appears in the reflection. But it's way off to the top of the photo, which just feels a little off, but in a good way I find. And that brings me to the end of this day, and on this evening we just got dinner at the convenience store. Anyhow, time to rest for another exciting day to come. Then, before we continue, I want to take a moment to thank the continued sponsor of my channel, Squarespace. When anyone ever asks me how or where to make a website, I always just send them to Squarespace. It is, in my opinion, such a good service that combines easy and intuitive usage with creative freedom. Over the years, they've created this incredible product that allows me to make a website intuitively without any coding knowledge, while still giving me creative freedom to play around with designs and the character of the website. I myself have been using Squarespace for 5 years now, and it's been great and seriously constantly getting better. I use my website to showcase my projects that are either completed or currently still in progress. However, you can actually use Squarespace for so much more than what I do. You can make a simple blog, but you can even make an entire online shop, site for bookings if you're a freelancer, pretty much anything. You can start off with one of the many templates and then customize the layout and design. Alternatively, you can also use their AI tool, which lets you create a website by basically describing it. But whatever you do, you get so much freedom to just change and customize everything so easily thanks to their drag and drop editing system called Fluid Engine. You can head to squarespace.com for a 14-day free trial, and then when you're ready to launch your website, you can go to squarespace.com/TeoCrawford to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. Thank you so much to Squarespace for continuously supporting the channel and my work here. I really appreciate it. On this day, our plan was to travel from Beppu to Kumamoto, which is the other side of the island. However, in between, we are going to make a stop in a place called Aso. I think this photo turned out pretty cool. The sunlight shining into the train from behind looks really good. I like how the right side of the window almost turns white, emphasizing the strength of the sunlight. And the simple composition works quite well in my opinion to create this pretty scene. We arrived in Aso, where we got bus tickets for the bus that was going to take us to some mountains. I got a shot of these cute bears because I thought it was a funny scene. These are the mascots of the prefecture because, fun fact, Kuma is the word for bear in Japanese, and so I suppose that is why the mascot for Kumamoto is a bear. This bus ride took us into some really interesting places. This is a mountainous area, however the mountains here are so different than the ones I'm used to from Austria. The mountains here are soft and green, whereas the Alps in Austria are more rocky and dangerous looking. This round hill was especially cute. We checked out the famous volcanic crater and then took the bus back to this big open space where you could just roam around the fields and enjoy the view. I got this epic shot of my granny standing in the grass. The lighting was a little tricky to work with during this time of day, but it's still alright.
あ、めっちゃいいよね。なんかここ結構人気あるよね。
With all of this open space and the people wandering around in the landscapes, I was having a lot of fun shooting, because it's just so fun to shoot these wide landscapes with little people in frame that convey the scale of this place. At this point, we were on our way to Kumamoto City and were riding another train. And let me tell you, if you are a train enthusiast and ever travel in the south of Japan, I think you'd also enjoy this a lot. At least I did. This photo turned out. The lighting was really pretty at this point, and while this photo is a bit chaotic, I enjoy the little details such as the mirrors that subtly include the train and myself in the composition. We boarded our last train for the day, a local train that took us into town. The sunlight was shining into the train so beautifully, and I was lucky enough to be in the front row and watch and get some shots here and there. trees. The lighting was so romantic in a way, and I love the orange colour of the train. Next day, we had another place to visit. I really didn't know what to expect on this day because my granny told me about this super old bridge that she wanted to visit, and that was basically the whole plan for the day. Go see a bridge. But you know, I didn't ask questions, I just embraced the surprise. We took a bus to the Kumamoto bus terminal where we were going to take another bus that would take us out of the city to that bridge. However, we had quite some time left until the departure, so we went on a little walk around this area. This bus ride was long, so long that at some point I was wondering where on earth my granny is taking me. When I asked her, she answered that she's also begun to wonder where on earth we're going. But with a little patience, we did eventually arrive.
잔잔하기만 하던 엄마의 마음에.
So this is the bridge. What makes it special is two things actually. Firstly, it's technically not only a bridge, it's the largest stone aqueduct in Japan that was completed back in 1854. Secondly, it discharges water, which is a mechanical cleaning mechanism that was built into the bridge, which I'll show you in a bit. This release of water is actually quite the attraction here, and so it was announced to take place at exactly 1 PM so that curious visitors can watch. There was still some time left until 1, and so we walked around to explore the upper areas of the bridge before returning to ground level to watch the water come out. And turns out, on this particular day, we were certainly not the only people here to watch this happen. There was not just one school group, but many. Just when I thought that all the school kids arrived, more came from around the corner. I didn't catch the moment when the water first came out, but you can imagine the kids shouted a countdown while checking the time, and then this impressive waterfall began shooting out of the bridge. It was quite the spectacle, and I loved the amusement everyone had here. It was actually all the more fun with all the people, especially the kids here.
무관심 어설프긴 해도 괜찮은 놈이에요 나 내가 그대라면 날 선택할 텐데 눈 감아도 그대만 보여요 터질 것 같은 이만
Later, I got to see the, let's call him the bridge master, the guy who opens and closes the bridge's waterway. He was such a friendly guy who had before already explained something to me, and right after he closed the bridge I was able to shoot this portrait of him. After our little excursion to the bridge, we took the bus back to Kumamoto and then a train that took us to the south end of the island down to Kagoshima, where we ended our day with ramen. The next day was a little gloomy, grey weather with a little bit of rain, so I wasn't sure how much interesting lighting I'd find to shoot. Anyway, on this day we were going to visit Sakurajima, which is an island close to the city which you can take a ferry to. On the ferry, I was fascinated by the colour contrast of the vibrant green floor and the red chairs, so this is where I shot my first photos. I love how my granny just fits in the shot perfectly with her red jacket. As I had kind of expected, I didn't shoot too much on the island because the lighting just was a bit too flat, but here I did get the shot of the guy scanning the view with his binoculars. On the next day, my granny and I split ways. She took the day slowly and just stayed in Kagoshima while I travelled quite deep into the countryside to meet someone. I was going to meet a local who lives a very interesting life, at least in my eyes, and I was able to go to see him for a day to document some parts of his life.
こういう音楽が好きなんですか？これは何だ？いや、もう何でもいい。あ、何でも。おお。ひげも猫のやからね。その
電車乗ったってこっちは手の力がない感覚がなくなる。
なるほど。I didn't film too much because I was concentrating on the meetup and the photography. Also, I had to concentrate because this was some good practice for my conversational skills in Japanese, especially the listening part, because this part of Japan has a different accent, or dialect you could say, than the Japanese I'm used to hearing and speaking in Tokyo. It was a great day, super interesting and fun, plus I got some photographs that I'm really happy with. I really appreciate that Kozo-san let me get a little glimpse of his life.
すごい音出るんだよね。すごいね。これいつ作ったんですか？
今日いっぱい撮れてよかった。俺のブログを見て、もうすごい外の方が出てくるからね。一点が撮れたわけやから。
Tenho esse mar todo pra olhar.
Then, at last, the next day was the day that we were going to travel to Sasebo, my granny's hometown. We took a train to a place called Tosu, where we had some time before changing to a different train, so we went on a little walk.
Sol brilhando e os patos nadam em paz. Meus passos vão mostrando o prazer de observar as flores no caminho. É um agrado que Deus deu. Dia após o outro, foi o que ele prometeu.
Once we arrived in Sasebo, we took a bus because my granny wanted to check out a spot outside of the city, and the bus ride would also double as a little sighting tour, I suppose.
아리타게 저려오는 왼쪽 팔에 잠이 든 널 깨우고 싶지 않아서.
This photograph was shot through the bus window, which was quite old, not in the cleanest state, and so the photo has this crazy strong glow to it.
내 곁에서 쉬게 해주고 싶은 이 마음 말까 조금은 서운해지곤 해 좀 더 얘기하고 싶었는데 이렇게 나란
I like this shot, it's simple yet quite effective.
잠든 네 얼굴 보면서 지켜 지켜줄 수 있어 행복해
누구한테 못 가시요? 누구한테?
누구였냐 아빠도 가져가.
Then, after enjoying the beautiful view of the islands across the sea, we decided to walk down the hill where we'd then catch a bus to go into town. However, we got a little lost. We took a wrong turn, and so my granny decided to call her sister, who unlike my granny still lives here in Sasebo, to pick us up. While waiting for our pickup, I decided to explore this little place down the hill where I met some cats and this kind lady who sometimes takes care of them. We had a little chat and I got to take her portrait. The rest of the afternoon then was basically family time. I hadn't met my great aunt and uncle in maybe 20 years, so we caught up and just had a nice afternoon and evening. The next day was the one before last day of the trip. I spent my morning exploring Sasebo and shooting, and then in the afternoon I was heading to our last stop, Hakata, but on the way I stopped by in Akizuki, which you might remember from the video I made about this part of the trip. Meanwhile, my granny stayed in Sasebo a little longer to have some more time with family, and then we met up again in the evening in Hakata to see some sights in Fukuoka Prefecture the next day, before taking the train back to Tokyo in the evening.
53分発快速同型
ぱいよこれ。まあみんなここで降りるのかな。
Born over faultline, bad teeth and worse habits, high heels in a trailer.
It was the last day, and we took the train out to see the famous Lying Buddha outside of the city.
Cracking like a glacier, any semblance of restraint. Simple observations of a tired out complaint. I get in my own way, I get in my own way, I get in my own way. I get in my own way, I get in my own way, I get in my own way. Amplifier washes, glass up in sand.
I like this photo. It's a little random, but I was fond of the three brooms that were weirdly spaced apart from each other. This made for a decent composition, I'd say. This spot, the Nanzoin Temple, was super pretty. It was quite jungly with lots of old trees, a bunch of moss and streams of water. It was beautiful. And that is all we did on this day. In the evening, it was time to return to Tokyo with the Shinkansen, which, by the way, fascinates me. The fact that I can leave Hakata at 5 PM and be at home in Tokyo by 11 or midnight is quite impressive. Anyway, this sort of rounds off this Japan series. You've seen that I've begun making videos here in Austria again, which I'm already sprinkling in between, but this was basically the end of my stay in Japan. Once I was back in Tokyo, I think I had about 3 or so days before returning to Austria. There is, however, later this month, one more Japan video, the grand final if you will. It's going to be a long one. I'll get to work on that one now, so I shall see you then. Before saying goodbye, I would like to say a massive thank you to the lovely people supporting me and my work on Patreon. Thank you so much to each one of you. If you're interested in Lightroom presets, tutorials and stuff like that, you can check out my page via the link in the description. Also, I have a print shop in case that is of interest to you, also in the description. With that said, I hope to see you again soon. Until then, goodbye.